All right, so now I would like to just share with you some the foundational knowledge regarding the ISTA documentation framework. And I want to give you a little bit of background on this, okay? Now, first of all, I think in order to understand ISTA, you have to know a little bit about commercial law, or the law of contract, I should say. In law, there's a specialization called contract law, which deals with, as you can imagine, all the uh, contractual matters when people decide to enter into a commercial relationship. Okay. Now when you look at it, it's actually very simple, but it's helpful if you first of all understand at least a little bit about contract law. Okay, and I really mean just the basics. Okay, now in contract law, there has to be two parties, A and B. Okay, X and Y, you and me. Okay, and they have to be normal people. They can't be crazy. Okay, they can't be children, and they have to have a normal. They cannot have mental problems. Okay, nothing like that. Just normal people, and they come together and by their own willingness, okay, they want to create a legal relationship. So no one's forcing it on them. And there is what we call a bargain for exchange. This is very simple. Okay? It just means we exchange something for something. So I can enter into a contract with you, and then after the Chinese New Year, I buy your phone for $500. Probably worth more than that. It has to be an exchange of something for something. So if I offer Lisa to teach you how to play tennis, and I say, I'll do it for free, okay? That's not a contract. Even if I write it down on paper and I promise to teach you how to play tennis. I don't play tennis, by the way. That is not a contract, okay? But if I say to her, I promise to teach you how to play tennis, and I charge you a tuition fee, even if it's just $1, doesn't matter, okay? As long as there has to be an exchange of I offer something and then she accepts. Okay, so that's what's meant by offer. There is something offered and someone is accepting it. Okay? You don't realize that, when you walk into a shop, any shop, you walk into a supermarket and you look on the shelf and you see all this food stuff, and you want to buy some toilet paper, okay? And there is a price. There's a price there. That is an offer. Okay, so they offer to sell it to you at, let's say, $20 for 10 rolls of toilet paper. So when you take it, you accept that offer. You know what? Sometimes, and this is actually the law, okay? If you get something in a supermarket and there is a price clearly indicated on the shelf, okay, so let's say $20, that's the offer, and then at the counter, the checkout lady tells you, oh, I'm sorry, we made a mistake, it's actually 25. By law, they have to give you this price. Did you know that? Yeah, well now you do, okay? Of course, if they said they give you a cheaper price, you take that, right? But, what happened? So that is what offer means, okay? So it's offer and acceptance, and it's legally binding which means that you can't say, oh, I'm sorry, I changed my mind, or I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You can't do that. Okay? So now that's contract law. I want to tell you this because ISDA is actually a special case, if you like, of contract law. And we have this platform, or we have this framework, because normal, simple contract law is unable to deal with the complexities of derivative transactions. Okay, let me say that again. Okay, so the ISDA platform, and this is kind of important that you understand this background. Okay, so the ISDA documentation framework, which I will introduce to you, okay, is a special case of contract law, because simple contract law is unable to handle all the complexities in the derivative world. Okay, now maybe you're wondering what kind of complexities. I will share those with you in this and the next week. Okay, and let me just play a quick video for you. Now, I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this at the beginning, and I'm going to play this at the end again. Okay, and you tell me whether. So right now, when you watch this, it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. So don't worry about that, because I'm going to play this. So we're going to discuss this for, at least a couple of hours, not just today, next time, okay? And then I'm going to play this again, and it will make a lot more sense to you, okay? Now this is just a very short, quick video made by Investopedia. It's only like 3 minutes. Okay, confused? You won't be after the next tutorial. Okay. Now, maybe you're wondering. Well, first of all, I think maybe you're a little bit confused. But if you're not, you are thinking, why don't I just go home and watch all these videos myself? I thought about that, and I actually looked through YouTube, and I can guarantee, because the things in there are so unstructured, and there's not really a lot of it, that if you just watch this, you're going to end up getting even more confused. And some of the things that they said in there are not really that important. And there are some things that maybe they have missed out. Okay, now another very useful function of ISDA documentation is it's kind of like a prenup. Do you know what a prenup is?
No. It's what Jeff Bezos carried on.
Does he have a prenup?
I'm not sure.
I hope he does. Now, a prenup. Well, what is it? You haven't answered it. Do you know what a prenup is?
It's like between you and your wife, so that when you guys get divorced, your wife can snatch up your treasure.
Very good. She knows. Now, a prenup stands for, it's just a short form for a prenuptial agreement. I'm sorry for using this example, okay, but it is the closest thing I can think of. Now, what is a prenuptial agreement? A prenuptial agreement is when two persons get married, I assume a man and a woman, they say to each other, so darling, I love you, okay, but just in case one day it doesn't work out, so how about we just have an agreement now, before we get married. If things don't work out and we decide to break up, so you keep the apartment, I'll keep the Porsche, you keep all the kitchen stuff, I'll keep the TV, and you keep the holiday house, and I keep the dog, and so on, okay? So then they just agree on everything. Before they get married, you have that kind of peace of mind. Like, now, how many people think this is a good idea? Some people do, all right. There's no right or wrong answer. For me, to be honest, I would never be able to bring myself to say that. Now I'm married, but if I was a single guy, I don't think I could do it. I couldn't go to my girlfriend and say, hey, let's get married, but before we do that, let's sign a prenup. I don't think I can do it. For me, it's quite I don't know, I think it's a very American thing in a way, okay? What I mean by that is, if you know a little bit about the American culture, everything is negotiable, I think, in the American culture. You correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Everything is negotiable. I think this is not so common in European culture, and certainly not in Asian culture. Do you know someone who has a prenup? Well, I'll show you some examples just for a laugh, okay? This is not related to ISDA, which is coming up, but hold on. So I'll show you what a prenup is. Oh, cannot down. Okay, never mind. Who? Justin Timberlake, who's a singer. Nicole Kidman, she's an Australian actress and a model. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, Brad Pitt. Okay, that now these are done. Okay. Michael Douglas. Now this was a famous one, but I think they are still together as far as I know. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, the Facebook dude. Okay. There's actually something quite funny about their prenup agreement, and I want to mention this because it has some relevance to. Now, the prenup agreement, it doesn't have to be just about money or what happens when you break up. It can contain whatever clauses that two parties are comfortable with, okay? And you're going to see examples of that in ISDA. So for them, it's quite funny. Their prenup is much sweeter than other couples, and is a good way to make sure. Yeah, so their prenup contains a lifestyle clause which makes sure that Chen gets 100 minutes of alone time with Zuckerberg and 1 date night per week. They have to put that in the agreement. I don't know, otherwise she's going to sue him for not taking her out for a date? Something like that, okay? So you can have, whatever clauses that you want to put in. Okay, so this guy got, Tiger Woods is not with her anymore. This one I don't know. Okay, so yeah, so these are not together. He got a bit strange with his religion stuff. This one I don't know. Okay, and so on and so forth. What else is there? Yeah, all these people. All right, now I'm not really just telling you this for fun. So although it is quite fun, but so now at least because some a similar idea also exists in the commercial world, and so like I said, if you have normal contracts like renting a home or buying an air ticket, already it is quite complicated. But if you look at an airline, you buy an air ticket, and then these are called terms, okay, at the back of the ticket. Or if it's an e-ticket at the end of the document. But at least you can still understand that when you are dealing in derivative markets or capital markets, okay, the transactions are a lot more complex, and I can tell you why. So first of all, the terms are more complex. You've got 175 countries all over the world wanting to trade with each other. So finance is very much a global business. You want to trade with a global community, but there are so many things that need to be standardized and market conventions. Okay, so the terms need to be standardized to start with, and then a lot of these transactions, they can run for a long, long time, and I'm talking like 30 years. If you think about interest rate swaps, IRS, okay, they can run for 30 years. So you start today, the maturity date will be 2030, no, 49, oh my God. Okay? So 30 years. So they run for a long time. Whereas if you buy an airline ticket, okay, in a couple of months or maybe tomorrow, you're already flying. Okay? So it's different. And then here we come to one of the critical issues. The mark-to-market swings can be quite extreme, and because there's leverage involved, and quite often big sums of money, you talk about billions of dollars, and you have significant mark-to-market fluctuations. So for all these reasons, transactions in the derivative world are really not the same as buying an airline ticket or renting an apartment. And we need a special framework to deal with that. Okay, so that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the essence of ISDA. Okay, if you understand me so far. And there's often a complex network of transactions between different people. So you could be Bank of China and you are trading with China Mobile. China Mobile turns around and trades with JP Morgan. JP Morgan turns around and trades with BNP. BNP turns around and trades with Louis Vuitton. So everyone has to be of the same understanding regarding what a swap is, or what a forward is, or what an option is, okay, or what is an FRA, so on. Okay, is everyone okay so far? Yeah, you still with me? All right, now, and when things start to go wrong, it can get messy unless it's properly documented. Okay, for example, Lehman Brothers, so they went bankrupt in 2008. That's already 10, 11 years ago now. Okay, some of their transactions are still getting resolved even 10 years later. Okay? It takes that long sometimes. Okay? And to my mind, apart from looking at things in the derivative market and capital markets, I can't think of any other commercial domain which would have all of these, where things are so complicated and the duration is so long, and where you can have wild mark-to-market swings, and you have so many counterparties all simultaneously trading with each other. Okay, so that is the background. Now, so let me just recap quickly. Okay, so what actually is ISDA? I remember a couple of years ago, so I was sharing this with, so these are now alumni, and then they went to an interview, and then they started talking about ISDA. And the interviewer was so surprised, wow, you know about this? And then I think they got quite impressed. Now, if someone ever asked you, what is that? Well, the simplest way to put it is these are the rules of the game. And you are trying to manage credit or counterparty risk by legal or documentation means. Okay, so it is a documentation platform, or it is a documentation standard that helps you manage the risk that you are facing out there. Okay, it has its basis, as I said, in contract law. So, and that's why I started with an explanation of what contract law is. And it is based on contract law. It is based on all those elements that I discussed with you, that you need to have two parties, two persons, or two companies, doesn't matter. They come together in a relationship, a legal relationship willingly, and then there is an offer, there is an acceptance, and legally it's binding. Okay? When you say something is legally binding, it means, so we have a contract, we sign the contract, we promise to exchange something for something, and if I back out, you can take me to court until I actually fulfill my obligation. That's what legally binding is. Legally, you have that obligation. Okay. So now, let me, so why is it relevant? Okay. So it is especially relevant when things start to go wrong, a bit like a prenup. So that part may not be obvious when you're watching the video, okay? But I will show you shortly. Now, I'll give you here. So here's a picture of General Electric, and it's the corporate structure. Okay, now, GE used to be a very, very well-respected company, and they seem to have like lost the plot in recent years, but it's still a big company. And as with most big companies, the way, and I told you this before, you know, you have what's called a holding, the holdco up there, and then you have all these are the opco. You remember I talked about the holdco and the opco, the holding company. And the same thing applies to HSBC or Alibaba or whatever, okay? And then under there, you have all these other businesses. So the holding company, the holdco, is normally at this level on top, right? And then the operating companies are down here. And so I think you can recall immediately, to begin with, the discussions we had regarding, what was it? Contractual versus structural subordination. We're not going to talk about that here now, okay, but you can kind of see that coming up now. So what are the opcos? You've got GE Global Growth and Operations, GE Aviation. So these are the people who actually made aircraft engines. Okay? Energy, so they're big. Oil and gas, power and water, all the hydroelectric stuff. Healthcare, they're big on that. What else? Home and business solutions, transportation, and then GE Capital. Okay. Now that is a very typical example of how a big company or a conglomerate will organize itself. Okay. You've got all these different business units, but there's always one which is a little bit different. Which one here is a little bit different? Capital. How do you say that? Very good. He said it's basically here. It's basically for financing or funding or helping the company run the financial aspects of all the operations. Now, so you look at all these other ones, they are actually hard businesses. Aviation, oil and gas, power and water. These are real businesses with real clients. Okay, capital, they do actually have a business behind it, but a large part of it is to help to manage the company's finance. Now, try and remember that point because we will actually come back to it. We will come back to it. And just keep in mind that in a lot of companies, this is what it's like. So there are all these real hard business units. And then there is like a capital, you know, XYZ Capital, Alibaba Capital, Tencent Capital, whatever, okay, which is quite common. So that's GE. Now, let me just tell you a bit about what are the key purposes of ISTA. Okay. By the way, this file is on Blackboard already. Okay. If you need to refer to it, I think the most important functions are probably to standardize very, very complex commercial terms, and I will show you some of these, okay, later on. I don't want to just talk about this. I want to show you something. And then the second thing I want to say is providing conditions for transaction termination, and then for netting, and then the last one is what we call CSA, or Credit Support Annex, okay? By the end of this course, I guarantee that you will understand what all these things are. If you pay attention, okay? You will understand all of these. And you will understand how they work and how you can apply them, okay? Now, let me just restate the problem quickly. So in classical contract law, it cannot cope with derivative transactions because of a number of challenges that you really only see in banking and finance. So very, very complex commercial terms. For example, even just defining the term LIBOR. You know, if you get a group of lawyers in a room, you ask them to define LIBOR, they're going to take, I think they're going to take a whole week. Okay? So you want to have that well defined. And then another thing is, if and when an entity goes bankrupt, the settlement is not as simple as we think. Okay? Who should get paid what, in what order? And you are stuck with a counterparty when you enter into a transaction. Now let me explain to you what I mean by that. So if you do an interest rate swap, so let's say you are JP Morgan and you do an interest rate swap with GE. And you all know about interest rate swaps, right? So one party pays floating and then the other pays fixed. So let's say you do an interest rate swap for, I don't know, for 30 years. And GE is paying floating and receiving 4% for the next 30 years. So they're paying LIBOR and receiving 4% for the next 30 years. Now, maybe you haven't thought about this, but actually, if you don't do anything else, for the next 30 years, these payments have to happen. The GE every year has to pay LIBOR 4 times and has to receive 4%. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, well, so what? For 30 years is a long time, okay? So you don't know what will happen to GE 10 years, 20 years from now. And it could be that they become a really bad credit, or they're on the brink of bankruptcy. And the same thing can happen to JP Morgan, who knows, okay? And there will be nothing you can do, okay? You just have to keep going. And then you just hope that, you know, within the next 30 years, nothing will happen. Now, if they go bankrupt, then what? Then they can't pay you, okay? And maybe you're thinking, okay, then I don't pay them. Well, yeah, that's true. But as I said to you, there is a mark-to-market to this transaction, right? So let me some of you guys look a bit perplexed. So let me give you an example. Now, so let's say this is GE, and they do an interest rate swap with JP Morgan and JP Morgan pays them a fixed rate. What did I say? 4%. 4%. Now, like I said, this has to continue for 30 years. And then they pay LIBOR. Now, this is in February 2019, okay? Now imagine we are just a couple of months later. So not really that far away, okay? So the same year, just a couple of months. But now the 30-year swap rate is not 4%. It is 6.5%. My first question to you, if you were General Electric, are you happy to see that? Are you happy? So you entered into an interest rate swap with JP Morgan where you pay LIBOR, and then they give you 4%. Now, let me recap. One possible scenario can be you issued a bond. So I used the BlackRock example, okay? You issued a bond to BlackRock. So BlackRock actually gives you some money. So BlackRock gives you $100 million. And you issued a bond, let's say at 5.5% yield, okay? And then you do an interest rate swap. Well, let's make it realistic. So okay, we don't need to see that. Let's get some real swap rates out there. Okay, now I'm going to look at the 30-year. Oh, it's actually quite low. So the 30-year interest rate swap is now 2.8%. Okay, 2.8. So I'm going to put 2.8 here. The 2.8%. Now, I already said to you that this number actually can change even from 1 minute to the next. So you imagine you do a trade like this, and then 2 months later, so now is April, and then the 30-year swap rate is now, let's say, 4.8% instead of 2.8. The 30-year swap rate is now 4.8%, which means if you go out there and you talk to any bank and you say to them, I will pay you LIBOR for the next 30 years, what is the fixed rate you can pay me? They will say 4.8. Now, if you are GE, are you happy with that? You're really quite unhappy. You're thinking, oh, I wish I had just waited. Because here you can see, if you just do a calculation, and I strongly encourage you to practice this sort of calculation. So here GE will be paying LIBOR plus 5.5 minus 2.8, correct? Which is LIBOR plus 270 basis points. If they had just waited a little bit longer, they find themselves potentially paying LIBOR plus 5.5 minus 4.8 if they really could wait. So that would be LIBOR plus 70, which is a lot less, okay? So sometimes your timing is very, very important. Now, in any case, if they are really unhappy about this, that probably means they have a negative mark to market. And you can calculate at least approximately, because it is a 2% gap. So it's the present value of a 2% gap. Now the 2% comes from the difference between what you did and what you could have done. So there's the 2.8 and 4.8. There's a 2% gap on $100 million. That's a lot of money, okay? So for 30 years, okay? And actually the idea that you employ is what you do is you use the modified duration, okay, for 30 years, which is not 30, okay? It would be approximately, let's just say 18, between 18 and, let's just say 18, okay? Then it's 2% times the amount times that. Well, you have lost $36 million on the mark-to-market, okay? Now, don't worry if you are a bit confused. If you go home and re-watch the video, I think it'll make more sense to you. But anyway, so GE is looking at a negative mark-to-market of around, let's just say $36 million. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah? Now, here is when it gets interesting. So for JP Morgan, on the other side, they actually have a positive mark-to-market, because, as I said, your gains, your losses are my gains. It's kind of a zero-sum game, yes. Okay, now here is, I think, why bankers get a bit stressed sometimes. Okay, if you are JP Morgan and you are making money, so you had a good trader, the trader paid 2.8 and they didn't hedge. So now they have picked up 36 million mark-to-market. Now that would go with your P&L. When you see a lot of annual reports from all these big banks like Morgan Stanley and BNP, and they talk about, trading gains, not trading gains, G-A-I-N-S, trading gains. They're talking about something like this, right? So the good news is they have a trading gain. Not so good news is this gain depends on GE actually surviving. If they are not there to pay you the money, actually you don't have a gain. Are you with me? So I hope I can emphasize this point and you all get it. The idea is when you are trading a derivative with someone and you are doing well and you have a gain, the assumption behind that is the other counterparty is going to stay around for the next 30 years, okay? Because those cash flows, if they are happy with you paying them back, it's because they're going to be around until 2049. So you only have a gain as long as this company survives, okay? Are you with me there? Yeah. It is a little bit like if you have a partner and you get married and you're really, really happy with your partner and you try to market your happiness, okay, over the next 25 years, you assume they're going to be around, aren't you? Yeah, it is kind of, you know, in a way, it is similar. If they're not around, you know, it's completely different. So that's the point that I want to make here, that well, it's actually related to the second and the third point, okay? If an entity goes bankrupt, it can get messy. Well, actually, it's related to the second, the third, and the fourth point, okay? You are stuck with somebody once you enter into a transaction. You can't say suddenly, oh, you know, let's not do this, and let's just terminate the transaction. Unless both of you agree. And then the mark-to-market swings can be very, very severe. So you got all these problems, and ISDA is trying to solve all these problems. How? Well, first of all, we try to standardize all the terms, all the complex terms. Now, don't worry if this doesn't hit you right now, because I'm going to explain all of this later on, okay? And we have this mechanism called netting, and then there is also another idea called credit support annex. So netting is like this. What do you mean central? No, netting here is a bit different. Netting, okay, maybe this is a good time to explain netting to you. Okay, what is a good way to explain this? I'll give you an example, okay? So I am a big company. Okay? I am PetroChina, and you are JP Morgan, okay? And no, it's okay. So you are PetroChina. I am JP Morgan. I want to be the bad guy. Okay? So I am JP Morgan. You are PetroChina. Okay. No, who's the bad guy? All right, you see why I get a bit mixed up. Okay, because I like to draw. Okay. Actually, okay. So PetroChina and JP Morgan. Okay, now the simple way to explain netting is like this. So if PetroChina gives $100 million to JP Morgan for, let's just say, a short term, a 3-month deposit. Okay, so they give them the cash. They got a lot of money, and they give them like a 3-month deposit. But anyway, so they do that, and then let's just say that PetroChina also has a loan with JP Morgan. Now, this is completely different transaction, okay? So JP Morgan has given a $50 million loan, although that's a very small amount, to PetroChina. So that for JP Morgan is an asset. This is an asset, of course, and this is a liability, okay? Now, what do you think will happen if JP Morgan goes bankrupt? Let's say overnight, suddenly they just went bankrupt. Now, PetroChina is not going to be happy. So PetroChina would say to them, all right, look, so I want to have my $100 million back, okay? No, let's just say, I'm sorry, let's just say PetroChina went bankrupt. I'm sorry, PetroChina, okay? PetroChina went bankrupt. It's easier to explain that way. So PetroChina went bankrupt. So now JP Morgan is jumping up and down. And JP Morgan wants to get back the 50 million, all right? And PetroChina says, look, I gave you 100 million, so I want to have that back. Now, you would think that, okay, I'll give you two scenarios. Scenario one is that JP Morgan should pay PetroChina the net amount, which is $50 million, right? Because there's a loan. So although PetroChina actually placed $100 million to JP Morgan, now they are bankrupt, so they defaulted on this one. So JP Morgan should simply pay back to PetroChina the difference between 100 and 50. That's the first scenario. Second scenario, JP Morgan should pay PetroChina the full amount of the short-term deposit and then make a separate claim for that $50 million loan. Are you with me? So here is, I owe you something, you owe me something. But they are two entirely separate transactions. So the first transaction is PetroChina gave them some short-term liquidity as a deposit. And the second transaction is JP Morgan actually made them a loan, a longer-term loan, okay? Let's say 5-year loan. And now PetroChina goes bankrupt. And JP Morgan says, hey, look, I don't want to pay you back your 100 million because you owe me 50. So I'm just going to pay you 50. That is the first scenario. Second scenario, JP Morgan will need to pay PetroChina the full amount, 100. And then for that 50, for the long-term loan, they actually need to file a claim for it. Which scenario do you think will happen? You understand the question at least, right? Which one do you think normally will happen? One more. Who says one? Who says two? You think one will happen? Who thinks two will happen? Okay, I'll tell you what, you are both right and you are both wrong. One is what should happen, but two is what in fact will happen. In law, okay? Huh? Without the netting, exactly, without the netting. If you don't specify netting, it doesn't matter. So suddenly, JP Morgan has an exposure, and then PetroChina has an exposure, and they don't net out, okay? Now, so you can see, that's why I said, just normal, conventional, classical contract law, it works like this, okay? The law is sometimes very logical, but it is so logical and it's so orderly, it is so systematic that it ends up sometimes creating even more problems. It is logical because it says that you should deal with transactions one at a time. Makes sense, right? Except that when you have something like this, I think really you should net them out. And that is what netting is about mostly. Okay? Is everyone okay with that so far? Are you still with me? Well, if PetroChina gives you a deposit, you are JP Morgan. If you don't pay them back, you are in default. In English, there is a saying, two wrongs don't make a right. Have you heard that before? Two wrongs don't make a right. It's kind of like this. Two wrongs don't make a right. So that means if I do something wrong and you do the same wrong thing to me, that doesn't make you right, okay? You're just sinking down to my level. So PetroChina has gone bankrupt, so they can't pay. But JP Morgan is not bankrupt, they can pay, so they will because they should. They need to pay back this full amount because legally, it doesn't matter whether PetroChina is bankrupt or not, they have a right to claim on that short-term deposit. That's right. Let's just say 90 days later, when it matured, and JP Morgan refused to pay. I'm telling you, they can't do that. They cannot do that. Yeah. Doesn't have to be, it can be just 7 days. Doesn't matter whether it's 3 months or 7 days. Are you with me? Yeah? Yeah.
For the first scenario, that would make other debt holders of PetroChina unhappy. So do they agree to this settlement?
Other debt holders.
Yes. Because PetroChina could have 1 million to pay all debt holders, and now it got nothing.
I understand your question.
Yes.
Yes, but you are right what you said, but in the reality is that nowadays in international markets, especially in the derivative world, okay, now I make this very simple example of one claim, one asset claim versus another liability claim, but the netting, which actually can happen, but the netting that we are referring to here, mostly it is referring to netting between derivative transactions, and that is practically it is market practice everywhere, and it is actually better for everyone, and you will see why in the coming weeks. It is actually everyone prefers netting. So if you and I have, 200 derivative transactions between you and me, so it could be that for half of them I am willing, I have a $3 billion mark to market on you, and then for the other half, you are also willing, and you have a $3 billion mark to market against me. If you are not able to net them out, okay, then if one of us goes bankrupt, it just gets so messy. Okay, so you're going to claim on my $3 billion, and I would have to pay you, and then I have to make a counter claim. Whereas Whereas when there is netting, nothing happens. Zero. I'll see you later. Yeah. So it's actually a lot better. But I get your point. But I think people see the benefit far more than they see the, the disadvantage of netting. Okay. Now, I'm so happy you guys are still paying attention. Yeah, it's not an easy subject on a Saturday evening, just a few days before Chinese New Year. Okay. Now let me just give you an overview of what the ISA actually looks like. Yeah. Yeah. The credit support annex. Okay. Now I will show you an example of that in the future, but briefly, this is kind of like margin trading, but in a big scale. Okay. I'll give you a very simple example of what a CSA is. So now I go back to what I said earlier, and I keep saying this. If you have a big transaction, if you are GE, I'll use GE again. Now, sometimes these transactions can involve huge amounts of money. I'll make a simple one. Okay, I'll make it simple. So let's just say, so we use PetroChina as an example. So PetroChina versus Goldman Sachs, let's say. And let's say they make an oil forward. When you start talking about this, it becomes a lot easier to understand. So an oil forward where so PetroChina promised to buy how much? 100 million barrels of oil from Goldman Sachs, paying $50. Okay, let's say they do an oil forward in 1 year. So in February 2020, now this is a contract. This is exchanging something for something, and these two parties they don't have mental problems. Okay, they are perfectly capable of forming a commercial relationship. Now, how big is this transaction? It's actually 50 times 100 with an M at the end. So that is $5 billion. Let's say the size of the transaction is $5 billion. So let's just say after they do this trade, 3 days later, there is some kind of crisis in the Middle East, and then Iran or Syria or somewhere, just suddenly they went crazy. And then the oil price shot up to 65. It really can happen. It does happen, and it has happened in the past. Now, first of all, if you are PetroChina, are you happy about that? You're very happy, okay? Except now you are worried. Now, how happy are you? You can quantify that happiness. You are thinking to buy 100 million barrels of oil, and each one is now $15 cheaper. So guess what? You've made $300 million. This really can happen. You saw the case with Amaranth and the way the wild swings on the P&L. Okay. Now, the problem is So you now have a positive mark-to-market of $300 million. Congratulations. But from Goldman Sachs' point of view, they have a negative mark-to-market. They are losing money, aren't they? 他们在输钱, right? So you start getting nervous. You're wondering, wow, what if Goldman Sachs actually, if they collapse, then they won't be able to deliver the cheap oil. And we went into a contract for that. It's easier to understand with just the oil forward, isn't it? Compared to the swaps. Okay, so what you can do is, and you will do that right at the beginning. You will do that right at the beginning with what's called a credit support annex, or CSA for short. You can strike an agreement, and the agreement would have two parameters. One is called a threshold, and the other is called the minimum transfer amount. Now, I'll explain the second one a little later, okay? But let's say the threshold is 50 million. 50 million. What that means is if there is a mark-to-market swing and is less than 50, then we don't bother each other. But the moment it gets above that, PetroChina will say to Goldman Sachs, can you please pay me $250 million? And Goldman Sachs will ask, well, why? And PetroChina will say, well, we had a credit support annex, and we both agree that there is a threshold of 50. So once you cross that, whatever amount you are losing, you pay me the difference. Are you with me? So this is kind of like margin trading or margin top-up. Because margin top-up works like that, but this is margin top-up in a big scale, okay? Now, actually, I can explain this one here as well. Now might be a good time to explain this as well. So let me do that, and then I'm going to let you go. So let's not use something so extreme. So let's say you started at 50, and you started at $50, and then it went up to $50.60. Okay. And the second parameter you define here at I'm trying to, it's kind of late, right? The minimum transfer amount is let's say 15 million. 15 million. Now, I'll tell you how these two parameters work together. It is actually very simple. First of all, so if you trade an oil contract for 100 million barrels at 50, and now the price rises to $50.60, first of all, if you are PetroChina, you're quite happy with that, am I right? You're happy. How happy are you? You are happy by 100 million barrels multiplied by 60 cents. there's so much money in oil, it's not funny. So that is actually a positive mark to market of $60 million. Okay, now, so first of all, $60 million is above the threshold of 50. So already PetroChina is thinking of reaching for the phone and calling Goldman Sachs and telling Goldman Sachs, hey, pay me the difference. Pay me 10 million. 10 million is the difference between 60 and 50. Right? Pay me the difference which is above the threshold. So Goldman Sachs should pay $10 million, but there is a second parameter called minimum transfer amount. Now, if this was set at 15, then at this point, Goldman Sachs would not need to pay. Okay. What if the price now rises to $50.70? So first of all, the positive mark to market is now 70 million. So it is actually 20 million more than the threshold. So PetroChina can call Goldman Sachs and say, hey, can you please pay me 20 million? And Goldman Sachs will take a look at the contract and they can see that, oh yeah, this is actually more than the so-called minimum transfer amount. So they will be paying that. So the minimum transfer amount is basically, you know, below this amount, you don't want to bother each other. That's what that's for. Now, the important thing to remember is both this one and this one are open to negotiation. So you can put whatever number you want there, as long as both parties are happy with it. Yeah. Why not set the threshold at 65? You can. If you set the threshold at 65, you don't need this one, you mean? No. Now, the threshold is the trigger for, okay, then what you, I know what you're saying. What you are saying is equal to doing this, is equal to doing this. That's what you are thinking. You set the threshold at 65 and the minimum transfer amount is $1. Now you can do that. What if you do that? That means as long as it goes above 65, the payments will start. Yeah, are you with me? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. When you put more here, when you put 1 million or 10 million, actually it's because operationally you don't want to keep calling each other every day. So you want to make a transfer when it's actually a more significant amount. You know what I mean? But you can put that at $1 if you really want to. You can do that. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
When the last market difference was value higher than 65%.
Yeah. 65 million.
Yeah, 65 million. But in my opinion, I that sounds different from that. When you set a threshold at 65 million, you will not get the whole difference of 20 million. You can only get 5 million.
If you set the threshold at 65 and your mark to market is positive 70, correct. You can only get, why did I say, you can only get 5, correct, yes. What I am saying is if you set it at 65 and let's say your minimum, let's just say your minimum transfer amount was 10 and now the positive mark to market is 70, so you should be getting 5. You won't get 5 because 5 is less than the minimum. So there are 1,000 different ways you can combine this. So like I said, you can make this minimum transfer amount to be 1 cent if you want. There are many ways you can combine it whatever you want to do. Are you with me? Yeah. What is it? It's the minimum transfer. Did I say that? Yeah. It's different from the threshold of 65 and the minimum. Oh yeah, I agree. Why did I say 65 here? Did we say 50? Did we say 50? Yeah, as soon as you start changing the numbers, whether you change this number or you change this number, you get different results. I agree. If you change this to 15, okay. Okay, do you understand what he's saying? He's saying if you have this combination A, this is combo A, and combo B is like this. This is combo B. The results are different. Yes, they are different. They are different until you get to, yeah, they are different. In fact, yeah, they're definitely different. You know, just on something simple like that, I can ask you lots of questions in a quiz, don't you think? And they will all be useful. And they will all have, you know, applications in reality. Okay, this is really interesting stuff. Yes, I agree with you. They're different. They're different. Yeah.
So Sam, let's see and say work the other way around. Let's say if the oil price drop and then GS or money to China, will it also work?
Yes, it goes in both directions. It goes both ways. Okay. Except there's a thing called one-way CSA, but we can talk about that later. If I don't tell you about this, remind me to tell you because it's quite interesting. Okay. All right. I think I'll stop here. I should let you go. You probably got other great plans for Saturday night. As they say, the night is still young. So, well, the most important thing to say tonight, I want to thank you for coming, and I wish you all a very happy new year. And see you after the holidays. Okay? Thanks, guys.